Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really provocative idea. What if that ancient story about Joseph and the famine in Egypt wasn't just history? What if it was actually a detailed blueprint for the end of the world? So let's get right into it. The source material we're digging into today puts forward this pretty compelling idea that the story of Joseph in Egypt is, more than just a historical account. It's actually a detailed allegory, a kind of roadmap for a final global crisis. Okay, so to really get our heads around this interpretation, we've got to go back. We need to revisit that famous story, you know the one, about the massive famine that hit the ancient world. Now, this whole narrative of crisis and control, it's probably pretty familiar to a lot of you, but here's the twist. Our source argues that every single character, every event in that story actually has a symbolic meaning that points to the future. So where do we start? Well, this whole interpretation really hinges on decoding the main players. We're asked to see them not just as historical figures, but as symbols, as counterparts in a much bigger end times prophecy. And the first parallel drawn here is, wow, it's a striking one. The source identifies Pharaoh, the guy with ultimate authority in Egypt, with this really well-known figure from the book of Revelation, the beast from the sea. So who is this beast from the sea? Well, according to the prophecy, this figure is supposed to rule during a future time of intense global crisis. You've probably heard it called the Great Tribulation. Okay, so if Pharaoh is the beast from the sea, who's Joseph? Well, the next parallel connects Joseph, the smart administrator who's managing the whole crisis, to the false prophet. This figure is also sometimes called the beast from the land. So what you start to see here is a very clear power structure taking shape, right? You've got a supreme ruler, the Pharaoh figure, and then you've got this miraculous enforcer, the Joseph figure. And together, they're setting the stage for a system of, total control. So that's the who. But what about the how? How does this system of control actually work? Well, the source argues that Joseph's strategy for dealing with the famine gives us a step-by-step blueprint. Think about how it played out. As things got worse and worse, Joseph gradually took control of everything the people owned. All of it was in exchange for food. And in the end, every single asset was consolidated under Pharaoh's control. So the argument here is that this isn't just a story. It's the template. History is literally showing us how an entire global population could be brought under a single authority when a huge crisis hits. And according to this interpretation, this all leads to a really stark choice. People will have to decide. Do you worship the beast and get its mark so you can buy food and water, or do you refuse and face being completely cut off, facing starvation? But it gets deeper. The interpretation argues this crisis isn't just about a physical lack of food. No, it's also about a famine of a completely different and maybe even more dangerous kind. To back this up, the source points to a verse from the prophet Amos, arguing that this physical famine runs parallel to a really severe spiritual one. So in this view, the end times will be a period of just overwhelming deception. It's going to be incredibly difficult to tell what's true and what's false. And this famine of truth, it's not something that just happens. It's seen as a deliberate campaign by these powerful figures to mislead the entire world. And why would people fall for it? Well, the source suggests that people are going to be swayed by these really convincing miracles and some powerful rhetoric. It'll make siding with this new power seem like the only logical choice you can make if you want to survive. Okay, but this brings up a huge question, right? Why? Why would something like this massive, widespread deception, ever be allowed to happen in the first place? Well, the source material gives a very specific theological answer. This whole thing is a divine test. It's not some random catastrophe. It's a purposeful event, and it's designed to reveal what is truly deep down in the human heart. The idea is that by allowing this test to happen, the choices people make become crystal clear to everyone. It's a way to publicly show who chooses to obey and who chooses to rebel. So this whole process is about publicly sorting things out, separating those who obey from those who rebel. And that, in turn, justifies the final judgment that comes next. In this view, it's not enough for justice to be done, it has to be seen to be done, so that everyone understands why it's happening. And after this whole period of trial and judgment, the prophecy wraps up with the destruction of the old world and the creation of a new heaven and a new earth. This is framed as the ultimate point of it all, a final resolution and a brand new beginning. So the source presents this ancient history as a kind of prophetic pattern, and it leaves us with a big question. What does this interpretation ask us to see in the world today? Whether you see it as a literal prediction or just a powerful allegory, it definitely challenges us to think about the patterns of power, control, and belief that are shaping our world right now. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.